Hello and welcome to the Community Voice. I'm Fara Sax. Joining me today is Dr. Amy Boyers. She is the co-founder and president of Galen Hope, which addresses mental health and eating disorder issues, as well as the dual diagnosis, treating adults and teens in two great locations in our community in Coral Gables and Delray Beach. Galen Hope emphasizes community integration, support for families, and builds a sense of connection and belonging as essential to healing. Thank you so much, Dr. Boyers, for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
So let's jump right in.
Sure.
You started Galen Hope how many years ago?
It's been 3 years now. Yeah.
3 years. And you come with a partner?
Yes, I co-founded Galen Hope with Dr. Wendy Oliver Pyatt, who has a history in the residential treatment center world, and she has started previous programs, and she and I created another program together in our past lives, and we thought we'd like to do that again. We have some ideas for what we might do for South Florida that's a little different.
And how is it different from what you were doing before in your other previous connections and engagements together?
Sure. So I was in private practice for over 20 years here in South Miami, and I was a consultant for her at her treatment center. And that was an eating disorder program. So that was specifically for individuals, females with eating disorders. And while we absolutely do treat people with eating disorders at Galen Hope, and I would say we do a pretty darn good job. We also take people who do not have eating disorders into our program, that have other serious mental health diagnoses, or they have one foot in both camps. They have some issues with body image or disordered eating, and they have some other diagnosis that's really impairing their ability to function. So we take adults and adolescents, we take all genders. So it's a much broader base of individuals that we're able to treat at Galen Hope.
And this is not a residential
Not right now,
in-house.
no. So we do have supported housing. We have a very unique model. We like to say that we're PHP plus. So PHP stands for partial hospitalization, and that's typically day treatment. The typical PHP is 5 or 6 hours per day, Monday through Friday. Because we are a program that's focused very much on being the least restrictive environment, and we're also really focused on helping people get back into the world and reconnected with their families and with activities that are important for them, we offer up to 12 hours a day, 7 days a week of programming. So in many ways, the amount of services that we offer is really equivalent to what you would get in a residential, but you don't have to live with us. So if you're local, you can live at home, or some of our clients do come from out of town and choose to find their own housing. If that feels appropriate and safe, then we're very supportive of them doing that, but we also offer supported housing for Galen Hope clients. Right now we have it for the adults at both locations.
And how many can you fit into the treatment at one time in one of the programs? Because you break it up into ages, obviously.
Right.
What's appropriate for one is not appropriate for another, and I would
Right.
imagine maybe you can discuss that and
Our
fill that
adolescent
in.
program is a little smaller. It's about 10 to 12. And then we have actually, in Coral Gables, we have 2 simultaneous adult tracks. So we don't like the groups to get too big. So we separated them into 2 groups. So we have 2 full, what we call milieus in Coral Gables for the adult program. So that could go up to about 10 or 11 per milieu. So, and then when they step down into our intensive outpatient, we have about another 10 there. So total number of clients in Coral Gables is about 34 right now.
And Galen Hope and Delray?
Delray, that's a smaller program, and that one right now has 12.
And there's so much information that you and I are going to share in this half hour together, but I just want to bring focus to that you are the cover child, you and Dr. Amy, Dr. Wendy Oliver Pyatt, and thank you so much for being part of that and really helping our community learn about eating disorder and mental health in teens and children, and I think that's just so important. So kudos to you and this wonderful article to be read at Inspire Health at communitynewspapers.com. Let's talk about the difference for children and what parents, since children are under our wings up until a certain age in most situations, not all. What does a parent have to know? What do we need to look for when we're seeing something not so good with our children that are in our keeping? Some of the signs.
Well, I always encourage parents to listen to themselves. I think if you really listen to your gut, that intuitive sense that something's not right, you're probably correct. I think that you know your child better than anyone else. And if something feels off, it probably is. You may not be able to fully describe it at first. You may not have the words for exactly what's going on, but typically parents know it when something seems off. Obviously, if you see a change in their normal day-to-day behavior, for example, with eating disorders, you may find that suddenly they have to have their own special foods, or they're eating only in their room, or you're finding wrappers hidden under the mattress, in the garbage, in their room. If you're finding that they are having difficulty getting dressed in the morning, or they're refusing to do social activities that they used to really enjoy, if they have less energy, if they are more moody. So I think one mistake that parents make is they look at the grades and they say, the grades are good, so my kid must be fine. And I have seen some really, really sick kids be able to pull off really good grades. And in fact, for some people, if they are getting more rigid, more obsessive, whether that's through an eating disorder or maybe they're having an uptick in anxiety symptoms, actually what you'll see is that their grades get better. And that is one of the ways that teens really fly under the radar, is that if I keep my grades up, people are going to leave me alone. And so sometimes a change in grades is a really good indicator, but I have to say, more often than not, in the cases I have seen, if you have a high-achieving child who comes from a high-achieving family that prioritizes academic achievement, they would have to be so far gone before their grades start to deteriorate that you cannot depend on that in any way. Like, that's great that their grades are still good, but I wouldn't use that as an indicator of well-being.
This is eating disorder. What happens in mental health issues? How does that present? We talked about there's really an overlap.
Absolutely.
But some of the things that you treat at Galen Hope with the younger generation of children, tell me how that might present and what mental illnesses you address in treatment.
One of the interesting things that we're seeing is that we're seeing a number of young adults, teens, who have not been diagnosed with autism and should have been. So we're seeing a number of kids that have a collection of mental health issues, one of them being undiagnosed autism. And so when that's in the background, that's just complicating the picture. So even though we always say we're not treating the autism, but we do have to consider the way the autism may influence the presentation, or it may influence the way we deliver care, that we may need to make certain adaptations to our treatment in order to be effective with that person. So, and I think probably kids that have some maybe mild autism that was missed early on and then lived through the pandemic, I think that they're having a harder time. I think that's probably one of the reasons why post-pandemic we're seeing more of them, because all kids that lived through the pandemic experienced a group trauma. They all were impacted. Some fared better than others. Some are starting to find their way, but really the effects of the pandemic are not fully told yet. There's a lot of kids who are still working their way out of the impact that had on them. So during the pandemic, we saw a lot of kids who maybe never would have ever gotten help from a mental health professional getting help. They had terrible anxiety. They weren't kind of meeting their developmental milestones on time. So with other mental health conditions, again, you may see changes in their mood, changes in their willingness to engage with the family, changes in their interest, them saying things no longer give them pleasure. You can see changes in their sleep patterns. They could be sleeping a lot more. They could be sleeping a lot less. You could see changes in the way they're eating. You could see changes in their weight. You can see that they are maybe becoming exclusively focused on something that they hadn't been before. You might see changes in their peer group. So there's a lot of things that parents may notice. And I think at the end of the day, you have to listen to yourself to say, is this my kid? Does this feel like my kid, or does this feel like something different?
Very good point taken. And I just want to get back to the autism.
Mm-hmm.
How does that present? Because who would have thunk that that would have been one of the things that, wow, that triggered this and that triggered that, and and it's undiagnosed.
Yes.
What is some of the under the radar that flies for these symptoms?
So
that might cause difficulty. I mean, maybe some children are able to.
Right. There's kids that manage, right? In certain settings with a routine, with supportive families, they may have certain mild deficits. So I think when someone has profound autism, it's obvious, but particularly with girls are able to mask autism pretty well. They're able to look around at their environment and kind of figure out what are the behaviors, what are the ways that I'm supposed to express myself that is socially acceptable. So oftentimes females go a lot longer without the autism being picked up than males. So you might see some awkwardness, some social skills deficits, some difficulties with nonverbal communication, difficulty with things like sarcasm. They struggle to really make a tight group of friends. They might make one or two, but they always kind of are on the outside. They get excluded a lot. They may have a real interest in other kids, but they can't seem to find a way to work their way in socially and make that tight connection with a group of friends. A lot of times they feel kind of confused by common social rules. They can be more rigid. They can have sensory sensitivities, light, sound, taste, smell. And so if this child has been able to function pretty well academically, they can have perfectly normal IQ. So it's not an issue of like learning differences or IQ. Some may have that, but often they don't. So if they can do school, if that routine works for them, they may kind of make it through to a certain degree, but there may come a point where the social demands and expectations exceed their capacity. And that's when they may start to kind of crack under pressure and start to experience more psychological symptoms like more intense anxiety, particularly social anxiety, more depression, or they go into an eating disorder, something that helps them kind of create order out of what feels like chaos for them. So we often see kids that have autism. And when I say autism, I mean mild autism plus other diagnoses. And at that point, it's complicated to unravel. It takes time.
And I think it's complicated for a parent because sometimes these children are not forthcoming. They're secretive.
Right. They don't want to burden their parents. They don't want their parents to be worried about them, even though they may be having very dark thoughts.
So what is a parent to do? They see the symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me what the next step is. Besides calling GalenHope.com at 888-592-1817.
Right.
But truly, what is the next step?
The next step would be probably most likely going to your pediatrician, especially if that's someone you have a degree of comfort with. They're always a good source of resources.
Do the pediatricians have enough ammunition, enough knowledge, enough fortitude to take it the next step? Do they understand if they're not specifically trained in eating disorder or mental illness situations?
Some are better than others. I think what they can do is at least give you referrals. Most pediatrician offices have referral lists that they can tell you, oh, here's 5 names of people that have worked with my clients in the past and people like them. So that's a good place to start. You can always go to like the school counselor. You can ask clergy. If you have, perhaps you know somebody that had a child that struggled in some way and they found resources. That a lot of our clients get referrals from friends, from trusted friends. So, and a lot of people just hop on the internet and do a Google search. Psychology Today has a website that allows you to look people up also.
But that being said, not all therapists are equal and are trained and versed in the latest modalities to treating both of those. So let's go a little narrower. Besides calling GalenHope.com.
Well, but let's say you realize, oh, I think my child has depression. I think you can start to educate yourself even online. What is depression? What are common symptoms? We actually have a lot of information on our website about a lot of the psychological diagnoses. So that's a place to get information. You want to know what you're looking for and what is considered standard of care. You can make an appointment with a psychiatrist. It doesn't mean if you go see a psychiatrist for an opinion that you're signing up for a lifetime of medication. You can also just get an opinion. Psychiatrists are experts in making diagnoses. So that's always a really good place to start, or calling a clinical psychologist or a therapist. We all are trained to make a diagnosis. And if you're not comfortable with what you hear from the first person, see someone else. You can also look at your insurance booklet, see who's on your list. For some people, they really need to stick with who's in network because that's what's affordable. So there's a variety of places people can go for help.
And at Galen Hope, let's talk about that treatment. Sure. Let's talk about how the families get involved and how the children are part of that recovery, and what the role of a family during this time of healing.
So if someone's coming to Galen Hope, it's because outpatient care hasn't really been effective, that the person's continuing to struggle, they're overwhelmed with symptoms, it's impairing their ability to function on a daily basis, and they're suffering. They're really suffering, and they're not able to function at the level that they were previously. So maybe one session a week or 2 sessions a week isn't enough. The person's kind of drowning. That's when you would pick up the phone and call Galen Hope or a program like us. So then at that point, we would do our own evaluation. We would reach out to anybody who's treating that individual to get a well-rounded picture. We talk to the family members if they're involved. Obviously, if it's a child, the parents are going to be super involved and have a lot to say about what's been going on. And then we make a determination about what level of care would be most appropriate. So for someone who's very, very symptomatic, they would be in one of our higher levels of care. So we have a 12-hour-a-day program. Then the next level below that is an 8-hour-a-day program. Those are our partial hospitalization programs. And then in our intensive outpatient program, someone can be with us 5 hours a day or 3 hours a day, depending on their needs.
And is it group therapy? Is it individual therapy? Is it team building? Is it exposure?
It's
what
all
goes
of the
on?
above.
Okay.
So their day is busy. There are a number of group therapies throughout the day and the week. So that every day is different groups. So you don't get a repetition throughout the course of the week of groups. So we offer a lot of different types of group. We have skill-based group, we have experiential groups, and we have process-based groups. They have individual therapy several times a week. They meet weekly with the psychiatrist. They meet weekly with the dietitian. Even our clients who do not have eating disorders do meet with our nutrition team, because many people who are suffering with any kind of psychological diagnosis often stop taking care of themselves. So we focus a lot on wellness and well-being, and how do you work movement or exercise into your routine? What is a better way to eat to support your mental health? So the nutrition piece is important no matter what your diagnosis is. And then everybody has a care partner on their team. So a care partner is kind of like a life coach, case manager, recovery coach, and that person starts working with the clients from day one on practicing skills, doing therapeutic assignments from the therapist, exposure exercises, and helping them in areas where there may be some deficits. If you've been struggling for a while with a mental illness, there may be areas in your life where either you're not functioning developmentally where you should be, or you've developed some fears and resistance around doing things for yourself that other people have kind of been jumping in and helping you day to day and getting back into living your life. There can be a lot of fears associated with that, especially for kids who are pulled out of college or pulled out of high school. We have to work through a lot of feelings about going back. There's a lot of fear about seeing people again after being away. What am I going to tell people? How do I explain that? They can feel a little embarrassed. So we do a lot of work with our clients on reintegrating them back into their lives, whatever that may be. If you're in high school, it might be getting back involved with sports or other activities. In college, it may be getting you going back to class, getting you living on campus again. So the care partner is the one that's looking to see, do you have the skills to manage your life independently?
And then once there is a step down, how does the family come into play?
So families
for those that are the children that are living with their families, if they're not going back to college or on their own.
I think the beauty of our program for adolescents is that they do live with their family. So they can receive a very high level of support in our program, up to 12 hours a day, and still live with the family, that the family is not separated. And I think that that's really important. A lot of families have very justified fears and reservations about putting their child in a residential program where the child lives there. There are cases where absolutely clinically that's the only choice, but many people can be managed at home. So we have families that live here locally in South Florida, and we have families that come to our program from out of town specifically for that reason, so that the family stays together, that at night that child is going home to their parents and the parents are here, so they are participating along the way. They're not separated from the child. They get weekly family therapy, weekly parent coaching, and we offer a variety of services for families that gives them an opportunity to learn and get a better understanding of the treatment process in general, and also specifically what their loved one might be struggling with.
And do they become a team, those other families? Do they engage with each other?
They do. They actually really start to look forward to seeing each other each month. So once a month on a Friday, we offer a full day of programming for our families, and it's geared towards them. We offer workshops on different topics that we know are of interest to them and things that they are kind of struggling with and need more understanding about. We give them lots of opportunities to process their feelings and ask questions and connect with other families. And I always know if they come once, they're going to come again, because it feels really good to them to be in an environment with people who are going through the same thing, that have children, even adult children in our program, and who've been through a lot, that have struggled to help their child get well. So it tends to be a really, really positive experience for them and for our staff. Everyone really looks forward to those days when they come.
And it's great because I think, you alluded to the trauma from the pandemic, and then it's the trauma of the child not where are they?
Okay.
They're not feeling okay. They're ill. They're
Right.
not well. And so coming together as a group, it really takes a village.
Yeah. And it gives them hope, because everybody's at a different place in their journey. So a new family is going to meet a family who's maybe finishing up and see that eventually all this treatment works, that they do get better. So that's also provides families a lot of hope as well.
Getting better. How long does that take? Because you had a crystal ball. You've been in the industry for many, many, many years in your private practice and with the Galen Hope. How long? I'm sure that's the $1 million question.
Yeah.
And then you say mental health or eating disorder. If they're younger and if they've had it a shorter amount of time, does that make it easier to get this albatross out of our lives? And what is that about? It's such a
complicated question, because obviously the younger the individual is and the sooner it is detected and diagnosed, the better the outcome is going to be, right? Because it hasn't had a chance to really infiltrate all kinds of aspects of their life, right? The sooner you can catch it, the better. But then you also have to balance that with what is this person's genetic makeup, which of course We have no way to know that. But if you have other members of your family or you yourself struggle with a mental health condition, genetically, that's going to increase the likelihood that this individual might have inherited certain tendencies. So that can make treating somebody who seemingly hasn't had this problem for very long more challenging to treat if they have a heavier genetic loading. So, if there's like 5 members of the close family members that all have mood disorders, several members with bipolar, or several suicides in a family, right? We know that there's going to be more genetic loading, or multiple people with addictions in a family. We know that even though we can't measure it, we know in all likelihood there's going to be a greater propensity towards those kinds of diagnoses. And that's going to be taken into consideration when we think about medication. But the longer that somebody has been struggling, obviously the longer it's going to take. The average length of stay at Galen Hope is about 3 to 6 months. So, and we've had people stay with us longer than that, and we've had people stay with us less time than that. Some people just go into our intensive outpatient. That's the one that's just a few hours a day. And we have some people that need to go into our most intensive program when they're with us up to 12 hours a day. So that's one of the reasons why we try to match the level of care with the level of acuity. It's sort of like taking antibiotics, right? You want to take your full dose. And, if you take a half a dose and then the antibiotics don't work, you say, oh, those antibiotics don't work, or was it that you didn't get the correct dose? So we really try to be thorough in our assessment of each individual and look at the history of treatment prior to coming to us. All of that gets factored in. And when someone's had multiple treatment experiences, when they've gone to multiple treatment centers and they've worked with a variety of clinicians, maybe in the community, there's a certain amount of trauma that comes with that too, of treatment sort of not working or not quite getting them to where they need to be. That also adds up and creates some hopelessness and frustration on the part of the individual and their family members. And that also has to be taken into account. They have to work through that piece too.
100%. And then one of the challenges that Galen Hope has is the insurance. Because you're saying 3 to 6 months. How do you navigate through the insurance?
We really do our best to help people make the most of their insurance benefits. We are in network with a few carriers and actively working with others to try to get in network, but we currently take Aetna and ComPsych and MultiPlan. And MultiPlan's kind of hidden in a lot of like United and Cigna policies. So if you look on your card, it'll say MultiPlan. So we do our best where we are in the negotiation process with these various insurance companies to help people make the most of their benefits. We use in-network benefits. If we are an in-network provider, we will bill their out-of-network benefits if that's all we can do, but we handle all of that for them. We do all the clinical reviews, we submit all the billing. So we free of charge, we do all of that for individuals who want to use their insurance. What insurance will pay? That's always a mystery. And we don't always agree with the insurance companies. Sometimes they feel this person seems to have had enough treatment, and we see on the ground that they need more time. And that can be really challenging for families because they have to make a decision about what to do.
So your team has to step in and to talk to the insurance company?
All the time. It takes a huge amount of time.
I just took a deep breath.
Yeah. We fight a lot with the insurance companies to convey the reality that these clients are living with and that they're not ready yet. So sometimes we agree, sometimes we don't agree. I think when what's challenging is if somebody's gotten some coverage, but we know they need a little more to stabilize, and the insurance is pressuring us to step them down or saying they're not quite ready. And that leaves families with a really difficult decision about what to do.
Absolutely. Social media. Social media as it fits into what we're talking about, and body image. Look at her. She has a beautiful life. Why am I depressed? How we compare ourselves, the false narratives.
Right. It's all engineered, right? People don't put up on social media the day that they felt really down, or that they had a fight with their spouse, or, when they had no makeup on, right? People post their best days and their best photos. And so teenagers are particularly sensitive to the impact of social media, particularly girls, but teenagers are all about figuring out, where do I fit in? Am I popular? Do people like me? Am I keeping up? Am I like everybody else? You know, teenagers just want to fit in. They don't want to be different. And so social media in the hands of other teens is not good for their mental health. They wind up feeling excluded, feeling different. And I also think that there's a lot of communication that goes on via social media that isn't particularly sensitive. I think they say things to one another via social media that they would never say in person. And so much of their life is lived online and on social media. And I think that it really makes it difficult for them to understand the impact of their words and of their behaviors on others. So, you know, the pandemic was a nightmare for that, because every kid on earth just spent hours and hours a day on social media because it was their only way to connect with peers. And so it amped up everything that we hate about social media. And what we saw was that eating disorders exploded. There was a 4-fold increase in the incidence of eating disorders during the pandemic. Thank goodness it has started to come back down. The rate of eating disorders is still very high, but it's not what it was during the pandemic. It was like it was just coming at us from all directions.
And what I find is, I don't know if you've ever been to a restaurant with families and someone's on a tablet, someone's on a phone, and where have we lost our ability to communicate and be together in the moment where we are, whether it be social media or texting or whatever we're doing. So,
right.
So sometimes I think you just need to put that phone away, especially for young adults that are going through this.
That can be one of the best interventions that anybody can use for their mental health. Take a break from your phone, turn it off. Put it away just for 2 hours. You would be amazed at how much you relax.
Absolutely.
That amount of stimulation and input all the time. And then think about being a sensitive teenager who's worried about fitting in and just being bombarded all the time with that kind of information. It's more than their brains and their nervous systems can handle.
And in the time that we have left, parting words that you want to talk about, Dr. Boyers and the team with Dr. Wendy Oliver Pyatt and your support team in Coral Gables and Delray Beach, and the great work you do for eating disorder and mental health issues. Something that you would like to share with us that we have not possibly talked about yet? Well,
one of the things that we talk about is our tagline, belong, heal, grow. And that we're not just saying that. It has real meaning. That first we feel that people need to get a sense of belonging to something. So one of the things that people find when they come to our program is that it's very warm, it's very welcoming, and a lot of the work we do is built on the relationships that we have with our clients and the relationships that become established within the milieu between the clients. So first they have to have a sense of belonging, and that sets the stage for them to heal. And then once they heal, they can begin to grow, right? And that's when they can leave our program and go back into the world. And that's real for us. We really seek to connect with our clients. I think that that's something that is missing, particularly when you talk about social media, that people really taking the time to connect with someone, especially someone who's been struggling with serious mental health symptoms. They feel like they're just defined by their diagnosis. So to take the time to see the real person behind that diagnosis, to really connect with their true strengths and weaknesses, and really start to figure out who they are beyond all these behaviors or symptoms, is really meaningful to them. And when they start to come out of that, it's very exciting for us and for the families to see them really take those steps towards independence again and become themselves again and find a life worth living.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Dr. Amy Boyers, thank you so much for all you do for the community, and good luck on just how you help people live full, healthy, fulfilled lives. That's what it's all about, isn't it?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So thank you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you for being here. I'm Fara Sax. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other. Have a great day. And a special thank you to Julian Chang, who now has a second location in Pinecrest. Go visit his boutique for all your clothing and accessory needs.